Jack Turner stood at the edge of the arena, his eyes scanning the vast, chaotic scene unfolding before him. The arena was a sprawling battlefield, surrounded by towering walls made of gleaming metallic structures. Strange, otherworldly creatures filled the stands, their eyes flickering with curiosity, disdain, or amusement. To them, he was just another human. But to him, this wasn't just a game. It was a chance to prove that Earth had a place in the galaxy. The tournament had begun, and Jack was about to face the fight of his life. He had heard the stories, seen the footage. The other species in the arena were powerful beyond imagination. Zorathians with their massive, reptilian bodies, Elorians whose agility made them like shadows, and the Thryxians, alien insects that could move faster than the human eye could track. They were the galaxy's elite warriors, and Jack was the only human among them. He wasn't a fighter by nature. He was a survivor. And that, he hoped, would be enough. He had been chosen not because Earth was a military powerhouse, but because Earth was a testament to survival. The human race had faced endless odds, wars, natural disasters, and even extinction, and had overcome them all. Jack was here to prove that despite being the youngest species in the galaxy, humanity had the strength and resilience to stand shoulder to shoulder with the oldest and most dangerous species. Jack's pulse quickened as he stepped forward, his boots crunching against the dirt beneath him. The air was thick with tension. Around him, the other combatants were already preparing. Some of them were stretching, some were sharpening their weapons, but all of them were focused. They didn't know what he was capable of. They would soon find out. His hands tightened around the handle of the simple spear at his side. It wasn't much compared to the high-tech weapons his opponents wielded, but it was all he had. His armor was light, made for speed rather than protection. Jack knew that in this arena there was no room for mistakes. One wrong move could cost him everything. He remembered his training, years spent learning to adapt, to survive. The human body wasn't built to withstand the same kind of punishment as other species. But humans had something that could not be measured in raw strength. They had determination. They had an uncanny ability to outsmart their opponents, to turn the tide of battle when all seemed lost. Jack wasn't here to prove that he could outfight the strongest. He was here to prove that he could outlast them, to show that his species could endure when others would fall. The roar of the crowd echoed around him, and the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, calling the fighters to their positions. Jack's heart raced, but his face remained calm. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for Earth. For the people back home who would never see this, but who would feel the weight of this moment. The first match of the tournament began, and Jack was forced to watch from the sidelines. His opponent, a Thryxian, was already in the arena. The insectoid creature was fast and fierce, its limbs moving like a blur. The crowd cheered as it slashed its opponent to the ground, leaving nothing but a bloodied mess. The creature had won without effort. Jack clenched his fists, watching intently. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a test. If he wanted to prove that humanity had a place in this galaxy, he needed to show them that he could handle whatever they threw at him. He wasn't going to back down. He couldn't. The next match was his. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. The doors of the arena opened, and his name was called. His feet felt heavy as he stepped into the bright lights. The crowd fell silent as they saw him. A human barely 5.5 feet tall, standing in the center of the arena against a creature that could easily crush him. Jack didn't flinch. He didn't let his nerves show. This was his moment. The alien he would face was a Zorathian, one of the fiercest species in the galaxy. The creature towered over him, its reptilian scales glinting in the light. Its eyes, cold and calculating, bore into Jack. The Zorathian raised its claws, flexing them as if preparing to tear through Jack's defenses. The crowd waited with bated breath. Jack stood still, his spear held firmly at his side. The Zorathian stepped forward, its massive frame moving with predatory grace. Jack didn't move. He waited. He didn't need to engage just yet. He needed to let the Zorathian make the first move. He wasn't going to fall for the creature's aggression. The Zorathian lunged, its claws aimed at Jack's throat. Jack's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't panic. He sidestepped, narrowly avoiding the creature's strike. The Zorathian's claws scraped the ground, sending sparks flying. Jack used its momentary imbalance to move behind it, aiming his spear at its exposed side. The Zorathian spun around quickly, its eyes narrowing. It had underestimated him. It thought that Jack would be weak, that his human body would slow him down. But Jack had trained for this. He wasn't the strongest, but he was fast. He was precise. He knew how to use his environment to his advantage. The Zorathian growled, frustrated by Jack's speed. It swung its claws again, but Jack ducked low and rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. His spear was still firmly in his grasp. He needed to end this quickly. Jack moved forward again, his body tense, his mind focused. The Zorathian roared, its claws slashing in a wide arc. Jack lunged toward it, aiming for the same spot where he had attacked earlier. But this time, the creature was ready. It raised its claws to block, but Jack had already anticipated the move. He twisted, ducking under the Zorathian's reach, and drove the spear into its underbelly, just beneath the thick armor. The Zorathian let out a terrible screech as the spear sank deep into its body. It staggered back, blood spilling from the wound. Jack didn't stop. He twisted the spear, driving it in further until the creature collapsed to the ground, motionless. The arena was silent for a long moment before the crowd erupted into a roar. The Zorathian, the creature everyone thought would dominate, was defeated. The alien had underestimated a human. Jack stood over the fallen creature, his body shaking with exhaustion. His heart was racing, his breath ragged, but he had done it. He had proven that he was more than just a participant in this tournament. He had proven that humans weren't weak. They were fighters. The crowd continued to cheer, but Jack didn't listen. He was already focused on the next fight, the next challenge. The galaxy had seen his strength, but that wasn't enough. He had to keep going for Earth, for humanity, for the future. The cheers from the crowd still echoed in Jack's ears, but the roar of excitement felt far away, as if it belonged to someone else. His body was sore, aching from the battle, but his mind was sharp. He had won against all odds, but this victory wasn't enough. Jack knew that. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, his hand still trembling slightly as the Zorathian's body was removed from the arena. The fight had been hard, but the hardest part was just beginning. The other alien warriors who had watched from the stands were now taking notice of him. Some were looking at him with respect, others with growing wariness. Jack had proven something, but there was more to prove. There was still the rest of the galaxy to contend with. Jack wasn't like the others. He wasn't born to be a fighter, and yet here he was, standing in the center of an arena full of the galaxy's most powerful creatures. The Zorathian had been defeated, but that wasn't enough to earn Earth a place in the stars. It was a start, but he needed more. The galaxy would not be satisfied with just one victory. The tournament continued, but Jack had no intention of being anyone's pawn. He had been chosen to represent humanity, and he had already learned the galaxy's first lesson. Survival wasn't about strength. It was about will. It was about knowing when to fight and when to wait. The truly dangerous ones weren't always the strongest. Sometimes the quietest were the most deadly. Jack's eyes scanned the arena, his senses heightened. The alien species were watching him, sizing him up. Some whispered among themselves, exchanging glances that told Jack exactly what they thought of him. A weak human, an insignificant species in their grand galaxy. Jack wasn't here to play by their rules. He wasn't here to fight like they did. He was here to survive, and that meant outlasting them, outthinking them. He had proven to the Zorathian that he could hold his own, but the real battle was just beginning. The door to the arena opened again. The next combatant entered, a hulking figure with shining black scales. It was a Catharii, one of the most feared hunters in the galaxy. It moved with grace, every step measured, every movement controlled. It was a predator through and through. The Catharii had no weapon, no armor, just its body honed by years of hunting and killing. Its eyes were filled with cold calculation as it locked onto Jack. The moment the alien entered, the air seemed to thicken, charged with danger. Jack's grip tightened on his spear. This wasn't just another fight. This was a test of everything he had learned so far. The Catharii's voice was a low growl, almost a whisper. "Human, I have heard of your victory, but know this, I am not like the others, I do not lose." Jack didn't respond. He didn't need to. Words meant nothing here. What mattered was action, and he was ready. The Catharii lunged, its speed blurring. The arena seemed to hold its breath as the alien moved toward him, claws extended. Jack didn't hesitate. His training kicked in. He sidestepped, using the Catharii's momentum to push it off balance. It stumbled, but only for a moment before it regained its footing. Jack's heart was pounding now, his body moving with the fluidity of someone who had trained for this moment his entire life, even if he hadn't known it at the time. He moved to strike, but the Catharii was faster. It twisted, its body like a coil, and lashed out with its claws. Jack ducked, narrowly avoiding the attack. He could feel the heat of the strike pass just above his head. This wasn't just a physical battle, it was a mental one. The Catharii was testing him, watching him for weakness, waiting for the right moment to strike. But Jack wasn't going to give it that opportunity. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore, he was fighting for Earth. The Catharii growled and leaped at him again, this time with a series of rapid slashes. Jack blocked, using his spear to deflect each blow. The force of the strike sent vibrations through his arms, but he didn't let it distract him. His eyes stayed locked on the Catharii, watching for the smallest opening. And then he saw it, a slight shift in the alien's posture. A brief opening, a moment of hesitation. Jack's heart skipped. He moved not with speed but with precision. His spear flashed forward, aiming for the Catharii's exposed side. The alien twisted just in time, but not fast enough. Jack's spear found its mark, driving deep into the Catharii's scales. The alien howled, its body jerking back in pain. Jack didn't stop. He twisted the spear, forcing it deeper. The Catharii staggered but remained on its feet, its sharp eyes narrowing. "You are strong, human," the Catharii growled, its voice low and full of admiration. "But it is not enough, you will fall." Jack's mind was clear. He couldn't let the alien's words affect him. He had learned the hardest lesson in survival. It wasn't about brute strength. It was about endurance, patience, and timing. The Catharii charged again, but this time Jack was ready. He used his spear to parry the alien's claws, deflecting them with expert precision. The Catharii growled in frustration, trying again and again, but Jack stayed calm. He was watching, waiting. Finally, as the Catharii made one last desperate lunge, Jack sidestepped, using the creature's speed against it. He drove his spear forward, straight into the alien's throat. The Catharii froze, its mouth opening in a silent scream as its life faded. The battle was over. Jack stood over the Catharii's body, his chest heaving, his body covered in sweat and blood. His breath was ragged, but he didn't look away from the fallen alien. He had done it. He had beaten one of the galaxy's deadliest predators. The crowd erupted into applause, but Jack didn't hear them. He was focused on the task ahead. The fight wasn't over. The battle for Earth's place among the stars was far from finished. Sophia had fought with everything she had. She had outsmarted and outlasted her enemies. But this was just the beginning. The Council was watching. The galaxy was watching. And Jack was ready. Jack's heart still pounded as he stood over the fallen Catharii, his spear lodged deep in the creature's throat. The fight had been brutal. His body ached, his muscles screamed from exertion, but he had won. For a moment he allowed himself to take in the gravity of the victory. The Zorathian, the Thryxian, the Elorian, and now the Catharii. He had defeated the strongest warriors one by one. But deep down, Jack knew the truth. His victory was nothing more than a fleeting moment in a much larger, more dangerous game. He could feel the weight of the galaxy's eyes on him. The creatures that had once laughed at him, dismissed him as an insignificant human, were now looking at him with something else: fear, respect, curiosity. As the arena's silence grew heavier, Jack's thoughts began to race. He was part of something much bigger now. His survival wasn't just for his own sake, it was for Earth, for all of humanity. Earth had always been underestimated, dismissed as a young, weak species among the stars, but Jack was proving them wrong. The universe would no longer ignore humanity. He turned away from the dead Catharii, his movement steady, his focus unwavering. The sounds of the crowd filled the arena, a blend of shock and awe as they realized that a human had bested one of their strongest. Jack didn't let the noise distract him. The battle was still ongoing, and he had no time to rest. Another door to the arena opened. This time the atmosphere shifted, the air growing thick with tension. The next combatant was entering, and from the hushed murmurs around him, Jack knew exactly who it was. The enormous figure of a Zorathian, a hulking reptilian warrior with scales as thick as metal, strode into the arena. It was the same Zorathian species that Jack had defeated earlier, but this one was different. It wasn't just any warrior. It was the Zorathian, the most respected, the most feared of all. He was the one who had earned the title of champion in this arena. The audience held their breath as the Zorathian's piercing gaze locked onto Jack. Jack's pulse quickened, but he didn't flinch. He stood tall, ready for whatever came next. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would face them again. This was his chance. This was where he would prove once and for all that humanity wasn't just a species to be overlooked. They weren't weak. They could stand alongside the greatest. The Zorathian's voice boomed across the arena. "Human, I have seen your victories. You are a worthy opponent, but you are no match for me." Jack didn't respond. There was no need for words. His actions would speak for him. He wasn't here to talk. He was here to survive. He was here to win. The Zorathian raised his massive fists, his claws glinting in the arena's light. Jack took a deep breath, his grip tightening on his spear. The battle had begun. The Zorathian charged, his massive body moving with surprising speed. The ground beneath Jack's feet seemed to shake with every step the creature took. Jack leaped to the side, narrowly avoiding the Zorathian's strike. The creature's claws ripped through the air, missing him by inches. Jack didn't hesitate. He darted in, aiming for the Zorathian's side with his spear. But the alien was too fast. It spun around, its tail swiping toward Jack with terrifying speed. Jack's instincts kicked in. He ducked low just in time to avoid the tail. The Zorathian's strength was overwhelming, but Jack wasn't relying on raw power. He was relying on his wits, his ability to outthink his opponents. This wasn't a battle of who was stronger. This was a battle of who could endure, who could outlast. The Zorathian turned again, its massive fists swinging. Jack was fast, but the Zorathian's reach was far greater. He sidestepped, dodging the first strike, but the second one connected. Jack's body flew backward, slamming into the ground with a painful thud. Pain shot through his ribs, but he didn't stop. He couldn't afford to. The Zorathian raised its fists again, ready to finish the job, but Jack wasn't done yet. He pushed himself to his feet, his vision blurred, his body sore. He was outmatched, outgunned, but he wasn't going to give up. Not now. The Zorathian lunged at him again, and this time Jack didn't dodge. He stood his ground, waiting for the perfect moment. As the creature's claws came down, Jack stepped forward, grabbing the Zorathian's arm and using its own momentum to twist it, sending the creature stumbling. The Zorathian tried to regain its balance, but Jack was already moving. With a burst of energy, Jack drove his spear forward, aiming for the creature's chest. The Zorathian howled, its claws swiping at Jack, but it was too late. The spear sank deep into its body, and the creature crumpled to the ground, its breath ragged, its strength fading. Jack stood over the fallen Zorathian, his chest heaving, his spear still lodged in its body. He had done it. He had defeated the greatest warrior in the arena. But the victory didn't feel like a triumph. The weight of the battle pressed on his shoulders, and he knew it wasn't over, not yet. The crowd was roaring now, their cheers deafening. But Jack didn't hear them. He was focused on the next step. There would be more battles, more tests. He had to be ready. The Zorathian's body was dragged off the field, and another figure stepped into the arena. It was smaller than the Zorathian, but it was just as dangerous. Jack's eyes narrowed. Another challenge was coming, but he was ready. The fight had only just begun. His hand tightened around the spear. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol of everything he had fought for, everything Earth had fought for. Humanity wasn't weak. Humanity wasn't helpless. They had come here to prove their place in the stars, and Jack was going to make sure they earned it. He didn't move. He stood still, waiting for the next challenge, knowing that the galaxy was watching. And this time they would know that Earth had arrived. The next challenge arrived almost immediately. The crowd was still roaring from Jack's victory over the Zorathian, but the arena was far from quiet. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as the next opponent stepped forward. He had faced the strongest warrior so far, and now the galaxy's eyes were on him. He was no longer just the human who didn't belong. He was the one to beat. The gates of the arena opened with a mechanical hiss, and from the shadows emerged a creature that made even the strongest warriors hesitate. It was a Caetharii, a race of elite assassins feared across the galaxy for their precision, speed, and lethality. Their reputation alone was enough to make even the most hardened warriors shudder. Jack had seen them in battle simulations, but nothing prepared him for facing one in person. The Caetharii was sleek, its body covered in black, armor-like skin that shimmered in the dim light. It moved with a grace and precision that made the other combatants look slow. Its eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto Jack, and for the first time he felt a chill crawl down his spine. The Caetharii didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its presence alone was enough to send a message. Jack knew he had to be careful. The Caetharii wouldn't fight like the Zorathian. This was a battle of strategy, not strength. Jack's mind raced. He had already learned something important in his previous fights. Speed and strength were important, but cunning and endurance were the true weapons that would carry him through this tournament. The Caetharii's long, muscular limbs flexed as it crouched into a combat stance, its claws extending, ready to strike. Jack gripped his spear, taking a deep breath. This wasn't a fight for brute force. It was a fight of wits. The Caetharii would be fast, unpredictable, and ruthless. Jack needed to think ahead to anticipate every move before it happened. The moment the bell rang, the Caetharii charged, its movements blindingly fast. Jack barely had time to react, dodging to the side as the Cathari's claws swept through the air. The creature was a blur, its strikes coming from every angle. Jack had no choice but to keep moving, staying just out of reach of those deadly claws. The Cathari's attacks were precise, its strikes quick and fluid, but Jack had learned to read his opponents. He watched the Cathari's movements closely, looking for patterns. There. The Cathari's right claw was slightly slower when it pulled back after a strike. That was the opening Jack needed. He moved with purpose, charging at the Cathari who turned to face him. Just as the alien raised its claws for another strike, Jack dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. He swung his spear at the Cathari's exposed side, aiming for a weak spot in its armor. But the Cathari was too fast. It sidestepped with ease, avoiding the blow. Jack's spear missed, and the Cathari responded by sweeping its claws at Jack's head. Jack ducked, his heart racing, narrowly avoiding the strike. The Cathari was relentless, attacking from every direction, never giving Jack a moment's respite. It was faster than anything he had faced, and Jack knew he couldn't keep up with it in a direct fight. He needed to outthink it to lure it into a trap. The Cathari lunged again, and this time Jack didn't dodge. He let the creature get close, waiting for the perfect moment. With a sudden twist, Jack grabbed the Cathari's arm as it swung at him, using the alien's momentum against it. The Cathari stumbled slightly, just enough for Jack to drive his spear toward its exposed throat. But the Cathari wasn't done. It reacted quickly, twisting its body and slamming its elbow into Jack's side. The blow knocked the wind out of him, sending him crashing to the ground. Pain shot through his ribs, but Jack pushed it aside. He couldn't stop. He couldn't let the Cathari see him weak. The alien loomed over him, its claws raised high, ready to finish him off. Jack's mind raced. His body was exhausted, his energy running low, but there was one last move he could make. One final chance. He rolled to the side just as the Cathari's claws came down, narrowly avoiding the fatal blow. Jack scrambled to his feet, pain flashing through his side, but he didn't stop. He ran toward the edge of the arena, using the terrain to his advantage. The Cathari followed, its speed unmatched, but Jack had one thing it didn't: a plan. The arena was filled with tall, jagged rocks, natural formations that could be used as obstacles. Jack climbed one quickly, positioning himself higher than the Cathari. The alien didn't hesitate. It rushed forward, its claws swiping through the air. Jack waited for it to get closer, then jumped down, landing on the Cathari's back. The Cathari screeched in surprise as Jack used all his strength to drive his spear into the back of its neck. The alien thrashed violently, trying to dislodge him, but Jack held on, twisting the spear deeper. The Cathari's movement slowed as the life drained from it. With one final roar, the creature fell, collapsing under Jack's weight. He pulled the spear free and rolled off, breathing heavily. His body was covered in sweat and blood, but he had done it. He had defeated the Cathari. The crowd was silent at first, and then slowly the roar of applause began. The cheers echoed through the arena, but Jack didn't focus on them. He was still too caught up in the fight, his mind still racing. He had done it. He had defeated the deadliest predator in the galaxy, but more importantly, he had proven something. Humanity wasn't weak. Earth wasn't weak. The galaxy had underestimated them, and now they were learning the truth. Jack stood tall, his body sore and battered, but his resolve stronger than ever. He had shown them that humans could survive, and he wasn't finished. He wasn't done proving that Earth had a place in the stars. The arena was filled with the thunderous applause of the crowd, but Jack barely heard it. His ears were ringing, his body aching from the brutal fight with the Cathari. He had won again, but this time the victory didn't feel as sweet. The battle was becoming harder, the challenges more dangerous. His body was sore, his strength drained, but Jack couldn't stop. Not now, not when the stakes were this high. The arena had shifted again. What had been a field of uncertainty for him was now a stage where the fate of Earth could be decided. Jack knew it, and he could feel the weight of it. He was standing for humanity, for Earth, and he wasn't going to let this galaxy full of predators wipe them out. The Council of Aliens, those who watched the tournament from the high balcony, were silent now. The Zorathians, the Elorians, the Cathari. They had all watched him fight and survive, and now they were watching him with new eyes. They saw something in him that they hadn't before. The human who had no place in the arena had just beaten their greatest warriors, and now they knew what humanity was capable of. Jack's chest rose and fell with each breath, his body still trembling from the previous fight. He stood tall despite the exhaustion, his spear in hand, ready for the next round. He knew he couldn't rest. His victory over the Cathari had earned him their attention, but it hadn't earned him a pass. There was more to come. A low murmur rippled through the crowd as the next fighter entered the arena. This time, it wasn't a single alien, it was a team. A group of warriors, each more terrifying than the last, stepping forward with the quiet confidence that came only with centuries of battle experience. They were the Lurans, a species known for their brutal combat style and deadly teamwork. They didn't need to speak to coordinate. Their synchronized movements told the whole story. They stood in a line, their weapons drawn, eyes locked on Jack, who stood alone in the center of the arena. The crowd went silent, waiting for the first move. The Lurans were no ordinary fighters. They had defeated entire fleets of warships with nothing but their sheer skill and strategy. Jack had faced strong opponents, but never like this. He wasn't up against one predator now, he was up against an entire pack. For a moment, Jack's thoughts swirled. He didn't have the luxury of being afraid. He didn't have the option to doubt himself. If he was going to survive this, he had to think like they did. He had to fight smarter, harder, faster than ever before. Jack knew that if he stood still for even a moment, they would tear him apart. He didn't wait for them to make the first move. He had learned his lesson from the previous fights. In this arena, waiting for an attack was as dangerous as making the first strike. Jack took a deep breath and charged. The Lurans didn't flinch. They spread out, surrounding him in seconds. Jack swung his spear, deflecting their strikes with practiced precision. The first Luran came at him with a bladed weapon, aiming for his midsection. Jack twisted, dodging the strike and using the creature's own momentum to send it stumbling past him. He didn't hesitate. In one smooth motion, he spun and slammed his spear into the creature's back. It howled in pain but quickly recovered, its comrades closing in to assist. Jack's heart raced as he spun on his heels, using the momentum to drive the spear forward into another Luran's side. But there were more. So many more. He had to keep moving, keep dodging, keep fighting. He couldn't give them a chance to trap him. One Luran was fast, too fast for Jack to dodge in time. Its claws slashed across his shoulder and pain shot through him like a lightning bolt. He gritted his teeth, refusing to let it slow him down. Blood dripped from his wound, but he didn't care. He couldn't afford to care. Jack lunged forward again, targeting the leader of the group. This Luran was larger than the rest, with a scar across its chest that spoke of countless battles. The leader swung its heavy axe at Jack, aiming to decimate him with a single blow. Jack ducked just in time, but the power behind the strike made the ground shake beneath him. He needed to get close. He couldn't keep dodging forever. He darted forward, rolling beneath the Luran's axe and grabbing its leg as he passed. Using his spear like a lever, he yanked the leader off balance and sent it crashing to the ground. The leader roared in frustration, but Jack was already on top of it, driving his spear deep into its chest. The creature's body went limp, and Jack pulled his weapon free, panting. But there was no time to celebrate. Another Luran was charging at him, and the others weren't far behind. The pack wasn't finished yet. They were learning from him, adapting to his moves. Jack's muscles screamed for rest, but he couldn't stop. He had no choice. He turned and sprinted toward the edge of the arena, hopping to use the uneven terrain to his advantage. He heard the sound of footsteps behind him, heavy, fast. They were closing in. But Jack didn't look back. He could feel them gaining on him, but he didn't stop running. He knew what he had to do. As he reached a high ridge overlooking the arena, he jumped, using the sharp rocks for leverage. He landed just behind the remaining Lurans, positioning himself between them and the crowd. The sudden shift in the fight made the remaining hunters pause, their eyes flicking between each other in confusion. Jack wasn't the prey anymore. He had become the hunter. With a battle cry, Jack charged. The Lurans tried to react, but it was too late. He drove his spear into one of their throats before the others could reach him. The second Luran, trying to retaliate, had its weapon knocked from its hand as Jack kicked it backward. The third attempted to charge, but Jack sidestepped and used the creature's own weight to send it flying off the platform. When it was over, Jack stood amidst the defeated warriors. His breath was ragged and his body screamed with pain, but he had done it. The Lurans were no more. The arena was silent, the crowd shocked into stillness by the swift and brutal takedown. Jack's chest heaved, his hands gripping his spear so tightly his knuckles were white. The arena was still, but the silence was different this time. The respect in the air was palpable. He had done it. He had defeated a pack of the most skilled, deadly assassins in the galaxy, and he had done it alone. Jack didn't wait for the applause, he didn't need it. He had already proven his point. He wasn't just a human, he was a warrior. And now the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. The silence in the arena was thick, heavy with the weight of Jack's victory. His body was drenched in sweat and blood, his muscles screaming in protest, but his mind remained sharp. He could feel the eyes of the galaxy's greatest predators on him, each one sizing him up, calculating whether he was truly the threat they had come to believe. The last of the Lurans, their bodies scattered around the arena, had been the ultimate test of his will and strength, but now Jack knew what he had to face next: the final battle. The doors to the arena opened again, and this time Jack didn't move to prepare for the next opponent. He stood still, his chest rising and falling with each deep breath. He had learned to control his fear to focus, but there was something different in the air now. The last fight had left him exhausted, and though his body ached with every movement, his mind was sharp. He had already faced the galaxy's fiercest, and now the one they had all been waiting for would step into the arena. A deep, resonant hum echoed across the walls as a massive, shadowed figure emerged. The crowd stilled as the doors slowly parted, revealing an enormous creature, the High Warlord, leader of the Celarix race. Its towering form filled the arena entrance, a being made entirely of thick, reflective armor, its massive weapons glinting in the light. The Warlord's presence was commanding, its steps heavy and deliberate, like the march of inevitability. Jack felt a chill run through him. He had known this moment was coming, but now that it was here, it hit him hard. The Celarix were the oldest and most feared race in the galaxy, known for their brutality and their cold, unyielding leadership. The High Warlord wasn't just a warrior. He was a legend, a figure who had wiped out entire civilizations with nothing more than his bare hands and a heart full of bloodlust. The thought of facing him one-on-one made Jack's pulse race with both fear and excitement. The arena fell silent as the Warlord's eyes fixed on Jack. They were cold and empty like two burning coals. He had never seen anything like it. His gaze held no emotion, no mercy, just cold, calculated purpose. Jack's grip on his spear tightened. His previous victories had been a fluke, skill and luck had played their parts, but this time there would be no room for error. He wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for Earth's place in the stars. He had to prove to the galaxy that humanity belonged here, that they were a force to be reckoned with. The Warlord stepped forward, and the ground beneath his massive feet trembled with each step. His dark armor shimmered in the arena's light, reflecting the silent awe of the audience. He raised his gauntlet, and Jack watched as the crowd fell silent. With one swift motion, the Warlord spoke, his voice deep and guttural echoing through the arena. "You have fought well, human, but you are not worthy of victory. You are weak. You are fragile. I will end this." Jack's heart pounded. The words weren't just empty threats, they were a challenge. He had come to this point to prove Earth's worth, to show the galaxy what humanity could accomplish. But this was different. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for Earth's future. If he failed, humanity would be dismissed as nothing more than a fleeting, insignificant species. "I'm not going down without a fight," Jack muttered under his breath, determination hardening in his chest. He knew what was at stake. He wouldn't let Earth fall into the shadows of the galaxy. Without another word, the Warlord charged. Jack barely had time to react before the massive figure was upon him, its weapon raised high. The Warlord swung with terrifying force, and Jack ducked, narrowly avoiding the strike that would have cleaved him in two. The weight of the blow sent shockwaves through the ground, shaking the arena to its core. Jack staggered back, his heart racing. The Warlord didn't pause. It swung again, its massive weapon coming down like a mountain. Jack scrambled to his feet, sidestepping just in time, but the Warlord's strike cut through the air beside him, missing only by inches. Jack's legs burned with fatigue, but his mind remained sharp. He had to outthink this monster. The Warlord turned and swung again, his weapon aimed directly for Jack's head. But this time, Jack was ready. He leaped forward, dodging to the side and then diving into a roll. The Warlord's strike missed again, this time barely grazing Jack's shoulder, leaving a long tear in his armor. Pain shot through his side, but he ignored it. He couldn't stop now. The Warlord growled, his voice a low rumble. "You cannot win, human. You are nothing before me." Jack gritted his teeth. The Warlord was faster than anything he had fought before. Each swing of the alien's weapon felt like the end of the world, but Jack wasn't going to let that stop him. He wasn't going to back down. The Warlord swung again, but this time Jack didn't dodge. He dropped to the ground, rolling beneath the strike, and then surged forward, using his spear to jab at the Warlord's exposed side. The creature let out a grunt, its armor denting from the blow, but it didn't stop. The Warlord didn't even flinch. "You are persistent," the Warlord said, his voice filled with amusement. But persistence cannot defeat power. Jack didn't respond. He couldn't waste time talking. He had to keep fighting, keep moving. His spear was his lifeline, but it was small compared to the warlord's massive weapon. He couldn't just go head-to-head with the creature. He had to tire it out, wear it down. If he could find a way to make the warlord underestimate him, maybe he could strike the final blow. The warlord charged again, and Jack did the only thing he could. He ducked, rolling out of the way at the last second. This time, as the warlord's massive weapon came down, Jack wasn't just dodging. It was a trap. The warlord's weapon struck the ground with such force that it sent debris flying into the air, and Jack lunged forward, jabbing his spear into the warlord's open side. The warlord's eyes widened. It wasn't a killing blow, but it was enough. The warlord staggered back, its balance broken for the first time. And Jack, seizing the opportunity, pulled his spear free and drove it deeper, this time aiming for the heart. The warlord roared in pain as Jack's spear sank in. The creature's massive form collapsed to the ground with a deafening thud. Jack stood over the fallen warrior, panting heavily, sweat dripping from his face. He had done it. The warlord, one of the deadliest, most feared beings in the galaxy, was defeated. Jack had survived. Against all odds, humanity had survived. The arena was dead silent. Jack could hear his own heartbeat in his ears as the weight of his victory sank in. But it wasn't just a victory for him. It was a victory for Earth, for every human who had been dismissed by the galaxy. He had proven they were wrong. He had proven that humans weren't weak. He had shown the galaxy what Earth was capable of. Jack took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. The battle wasn't over, but he had won. And now the galaxy would know that humanity had earned its place among the stars. The arena was still as death. The once roaring crowd had fallen silent, as if the entire galaxy was holding its breath. Jack Turner stood, his body battered, his face smeared with dirt and sweat, his spear still lodged in the massive form of the fallen warlord. The Zorathian, the Thryxian, the Elorian, the Catharii. And now the warlord, the last of the galaxy's deadliest warriors. All of them had fallen. All of them had underestimated him. All of them had learned that humanity was not to be dismissed. He could barely feel his legs anymore, his body too exhausted to move. His breath was shallow, ragged. His heart hammered in his chest, but his mind remained sharp, alert. This battle had been the hardest yet. He had given everything, every ounce of strength, every moment of concentration. But the fight wasn't over. Jack's eyes flickered toward the council seats. The galaxy's greatest warriors, the beings that had watched him every step of the way, were now staring at him, their expressions unreadable. Some looked like they were still processing the impossible. A human, a species that was supposed to be weak, had just defeated the warlord, a being that had stood unchallenged for centuries. The silence stretched, then the first voice spoke. It was the Elorian, the leader of the council, who had first doubted Jack's worth. His voice cut through the quiet like a blade. "Impressive," the Elorian said, his voice cold yet tinged with a note of respect. "But this was only one fight. You have faced our warriors, yes, but there is still one test remaining." Jack didn't flinch. He had been expecting this. There was always more. There had to be. The galaxy didn't simply hand out victories. It tested every fiber of a warrior's being until only the strongest remained. He was done being an underdog. He had earned his place here. "I'm ready," Jack said, his voice rough but strong. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for Earth, for every human who had ever been underestimated. "Let's finish this." The Elorian nodded, and the doors of the arena opened once more. A new figure entered, this one different from the others. The crowd began to murmur, their attention shifting toward the new opponent. This one wasn't just any alien. This wasn't someone who fought for sport or glory. This was the leader of the galaxy's most dangerous faction. The final challenge. The creature was massive, larger than any of the others Jack had faced. It was humanoid in shape, but with dark, scaled skin, long horns curling from its skull, and glowing, fiery eyes. Its presence filled the arena, suffocating the air around it. The ground seemed to tremble beneath its steps, and the sound of its heavy breathing was all that could be heard as it slowly walked forward. This was the last test. The leader of the Thryxians, a race of conquerors whose empire spanned across countless systems. No one had ever defeated a Thryxian leader, not in centuries, not in the history of the galaxy. Jack's grip on his spear tightened. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about something deeper, something that had been growing in him since he first set foot in the arena. This fight was for Earth, for humanity's place in the stars. The Thraxian leader's deep, gravelly voice filled the arena. "You've fought well, human," it rumbled, its voice like the sound of a distant storm. "But this is where you die. I am the last of the Thraxians, the ultimate warrior, and you will fall before me." Jack didn't respond. He didn't need to. Words wouldn't win this fight. He had faced bigger challenges before, greater odds, and he was still standing. He had proven that humanity wasn't weak. Now he had to show the galaxy that they would never back down. The Thraxian leader's massive hands clenched into fists, and with a roar it charged at Jack. Its speed was terrifying, its claws like jagged daggers. But Jack had already learned to move with purpose, to anticipate his enemy's moves. As the Thraxian swung its claws down at him, Jack rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike. The force of the blow sent a shockwave through the arena, knocking dust into the air. Jack didn't hesitate. He was already on his feet, moving swiftly, his spear aimed at the Thraxian's exposed side. The creature blocked the attack with its arm, but the force sent it stumbling back. Jack could see the opening now. The Thraxian wasn't invincible. It wasn't as perfect as it seemed. It roared in fury, its eyes blazing with rage as it came at Jack again. But Jack was ready. He sidestepped once more, using the creature's momentum against it. With a sharp twist, he drove his spear deep into the Thraxian's chest, aiming for the vulnerable spot beneath its armor. The Thraxian staggered, its body twitching with the force of the blow. It turned its head to look at Jack, its fiery eyes burning with disbelief. For a moment, the arena fell silent again. The creature was wounded, but it wasn't dead. The Thraxian leader gritted its teeth, forcing itself to stand tall, defying the pain. "You cannot defeat me," it growled, its voice filled with hatred. Jack stepped back, his body exhausted, but his mind clear. He didn't stop. The Thraxian leader wasn't going to give up easily, but Jack wasn't done. He had to finish this. He had to prove that humanity could survive, no matter how impossible the odds. In one final, desperate charge, the Thraxian swung its claws again, aiming for Jack's head. Jack ducked, rolling beneath the attack, and with every ounce of strength left in him, he plunged the spear into the Thraxian's heart. The creature let out a final, agonizing scream, its body convulsing before it crumpled to the ground. The arena fell into stunned silence. The Thraxian leader, the last of its kind, lay motionless on the cold ground. Jack stood over it, panting heavily, his body aching beyond belief. But he had done it. He had won. The crowd erupted into cheers, but Jack barely heard them. His mind was already focused on the next step. He had proven his point. Earth had proven its worth. Humanity wasn't weak. They weren't just survivors. They were warriors. Jack didn't need the applause. He didn't need the recognition. What mattered was what came next. What mattered was Earth's future. He had fought for it, bled for it. And now the galaxy knew that humanity had a place in the stars. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the fallen Thraxian. He simply stood there, breathing heavily, and allowed himself one moment of triumph, but only one. The fight was over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun.